hello and welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Melanie Tanilian and I'm the director for the Center of Armenian Studies at the University of Michigan. I welcome you to our third panel in the series Environmental Armenia, Climate Crisis, Conflict and Activism. And of course, before I start, I have to thank our co-sponsors, and I would love to thank our co-sponsors, the Eisenberg Institute for Historical Studies, the Donia Human Rights Center, as well as the International Institute, the Program in Environment, as well as the School for Environment and Sustainability here at the University of Michigan. Of course, many thanks go to Naira Tumanian, who helped put this together and who is behind the scenes keeping us on track and working. For those of you in the audience, you can, of course, put your questions and answers into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And I hope that there are many questions, as today we have our panel reserved to speak to activists in Armenia, and we'll do the whole day around activism and learn about the work and challenges that are part and parcel to environmental advocacy in the country. So on Wednesday, we learned about some of the environmental challenges that Armenia is facing and what the Armenian government is doing to tackle some of the most urgent problems and the many roadblocks that stand in the way of systematic change towards sustainability and ecological developments. We are joined today by JeanMarie Papelian, who is going to speak to us about the Armenia Tree Project and join me in conversation to speak about civil society perspective. We've also had scheduled Ruben Khachatryan, who might have internet connection problems. We're trying to fix that and see if he can dial in as we go along. But so I'll just proceed by introducing JeanMarie, and we have lots of things to talk about, I think. Yeah. So JeanMarie Papelian, who is the director of the Armenia Tree Project, and she came to the ATP, as it is abbreviated everywhere, and it's a well-known organization that has a very long history, actually. After 2 decades of community activism and volunteering in sort of the nonprofit scene, as I've learned, she was the chairperson of the Armenia Children's Milk Fund since 1997 and has also served on the board of directors for the Armenian Missionary Association of America since 1998. JeanMarie has a background in law and has practiced over 20 years as a trial lawyer on the East Coast in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and was awarded Best Lawyer in America in family law from 2008 to 2015. So a very sort of successful law career that is behind all of this social activism that you've been doing. She's attended McGill University and received her JD from Suffolk University Law School. So welcome, JeanMarie, to our virtual Michigan here and the panel on environmentalism.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So I would love to start talking a little bit about what the Armenia Tree Project is and what kind of work you're currently working on. I know you just came back from an important trip to Yerevan, and tell us a little bit about the Armenia Tree Project.
Sure, thank you. Armenia Tree Project was established in 1994 by Carolyn Mugar. She's an Armenian-American activist from the Boston area. And she was in Armenia in the early 1990s during those very dark times that we remember. There was the war and there was the blockade, and we were still dealing with the after effects of the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the earthquake. And those were very dark times. And we remember that there was no heat, there was no water, there was no light. And Carolyn was there and observed that in the winter, people were cutting down the trees in the city parks to heat their homes. And what she saw, because she's a visionary, is that if Armenia overcame those current crises, it would have an environmental crisis on its hands. And so she started the Armenia Tree Project, and it started small, and it's still a pretty small organization. We're a grassroots organization. We work at the local level. But since then, over the past 26, 27 years, we have planted nearly 7 million trees all over Armenia and Artsakh. And our mission is to improve the standard of living of Armenians by planting trees. And we do that in a variety of ways. I mean, we're not only improving the environment, we're also revitalizing communities and creating economic opportunity.
Mm-hmm. You say you're small. I don't think you're small. I think there's quite some successes that you have under your belt.
Yeah.
In your work, can you tell us a little bit about sort of what you consider the most successful aspect of the Armenia Tree Project?
Well, it's hard to choose one, but let me maybe if I can give you an overview of each of our major programs, because they're all successful in their own way. We began with what we now call our community tree planting project, and in community tree planting, we will go into a community and perhaps green a schoolyard or a churchyard or a public park. We provide the trees. We enlist local community members to assist us. And at this time, we have more than 1,300 community tree planting sites around Armenia and Artsakh. And what we will do is before we plant trees, we will get to know the community, assess the soil, make sure there's water available, and get to know whether the community will participate in helping to take care of these trees. So for example, the first season, we might plant only 30% of the trees, and we'll see how they do. It's important that community members, for example, let us know if there's a break in the fencing, won't let their cattle eat our baby trees, and so forth. We've been pretty successful with that, but things do happen once in a while. So a couple of examples. Many people who've been to Armenia have taken the tram to the Tatev Monastery. That's just one of the 1,300 community tree planting sites that we have, but it's very visible. Everybody goes to Tatev. And when you get to the tram site, it's in the village of Halidzor. There are many beautiful fruit trees on the grounds, and we planted those as a community tree planting project at the time that the tram was opening. And I was just there like last week, and there was no fruit on any of the trees. And we asked somebody who worked there, and they say all the visitors all pick the fruit when they come to take the tram. But what we also did in that village was we gave fruit and nut trees to every household in the village so that everyone could have fruit and nut trees in their backyard. And they could benefit from either eating the fruit or selling the fruit, whatever it is that they need to do with it. That's what we do. And so we give the fruit and nut trees, and we teach the local people how to take care of those trees. In addition, what we do is when we go into a community to do our community tree planting work, we offer our environmental education program. So we will go into the schools, teach environmental education lessons. We will invite children to one of our 2 environmental education centers. There is one in Karin village, which is Ashtarak, and there is another one up in Lori region in the village of Margahovit. And in a typical year, we usually get about 5,000 student visitors to those educational centers. In addition to coming to the centers, we go out into communities and meet with students in the schools. The reason why we have this environmental education program is because we know that it's critical for future generations of Armenians to be better caretakers of the environment than their parents and grandparents were. I mean, that's not just true in Armenia, it's true worldwide, but we're operating in Armenia, and that's what we do. We go into summer camps. We've created these eco clubs, which is sort of an after-school program in many schools where we empower the students to think about what problem exists in their community, and we support them in developing plans to address those problems. So that's a small description of what we do with our community tree planting program and its overlap with the environmental education program. Our biggest program, in fact, is our forestry program. And over the years, we have planted about 1,100 hectares of new forest in Armenia. Armenia, depending on who you ask, Armenia is at about 10 or 11% of forest cover. And experts recommend that the ideal forest cover for Armenia would be about 21%. And some of you will probably know that several years ago, as part of the Paris Accords, Armenia committed to doubling its forest cover by the year 2050. In order to do that, Armenia will probably have to plant somewhere in the range of 800 million trees. I mean, there's a lot to be done before this can happen. We need nurseries, we need skilled workers. The government needs to identify the land where these forests can be planted. But Armenia Tree Project is the leader in Armenia in terms of its expertise and experience. We have 4 nurseries where we grow healthy seedlings, and we are ready to support this project of doubling the forest cover over the next 30 years. This year, we're just about to start our fall forestry planting, and we're going to be planting 220,000 trees in new forests in Armenia this fall, for a total of about 400,000 trees this year. And next year, we'll plant about 600,000 trees, and so on and so forth. We have 4 nurseries, and we're developing 2 more, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We have 4 nurseries where we grow healthy seedlings. We do seed testing, we do propagation, we do grafting, and we grow, I know we always get this question, what species do you grow? We grow over 50 species of trees, including evergreens, decorative trees, berry bushes, fruit trees, nut trees, all of which are native to the region. And so those are the trees that we plant, and most of our forest sites planted to date are in the north of Armenia, in Lori and Tavush regions, but we are expanding just this fall to do our first forestry planting in Shirak region. Okay. Shirak region, for those who've been there, is a very dry and dusty place. It really needs forest. Oh, Ruben is here. Hi, Ruben.
Hi, Ruben.
Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Good. JeanMarie was just telling us about the Armenia Tree Project. So why don't we let her continue, and then I'll introduce you and you can tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing.
Okay. So I talked about our forestry program, and I talked about our community tree planting program. One more thing about the forestry program. In Armenia Tree Project in Armenia, we have between 70 and 80 employees year round. They operate our nurseries, they monitor our community tree planting sites, they run our forestry program, and so on and so forth. They do the propagation, they do the environmental education. We have 7 employees in the US, but during the spring and fall planting season, we hire on average between 150 and 200 additional employees for seasonal work. This is an important part of what we call community revitalization, because many of these forests are planted in remote areas where local villagers don't have many economic opportunities. And so it's an important part of the local economy for these people to be able to come and work with us for the 3 or so weeks of the fall planting season and earn that type of money. And what we hear from them is that not only are they glad to earn the money, but that they feel proud that they're helping to improve their community and their country for future generations. So we're very proud of that, being able to improve not only the environment, but also the economy.
Yeah, wonderful how that is, again, an entanglement of human and nature, how that plays out in your nonprofit.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what we're sort of thinking of, you know, when we're thinking about the environment, where is that interaction between human and nature historically, as well as in the contemporary period.
Right. So in 2020, when the pandemic hit, the economy of Armenia took a hit. I mean, not only were people not coming to visit Armenia, but people in Armenia who regularly go to Russia or other countries for seasonal work were not able to leave. And we found that we were getting lots of inquiries about our seasonal jobs. So there was a program that was established in 2020 and continued into 2021. It started in 2020, it was started by the Ministry of Environment, but we helped to administer it. And then this past year, it was handled by another organization, but again, we administered it, which was planting willow trees along riverbanks. So riparian forests are an important part of the ecology, and they're easy to plant because you don't need seedlings. You can take cuttings from existing willow trees. And so that project gave temporary work to in the spring of 2020 and the spring of 2021, about 300 additional people, villagers. The area where we worked on that project was Gehargunik, and those people in remote villages there don't have lots of economic opportunities. So it was a very important project, although it's rather small. It makes a difference to those people.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so in addition to the, we have forestry, we have community tree planting, we have environmental education. And I should mention that our environmental education program also operates outside of Armenia. For example, in the United States, we are in about 100 schools. Mostly they're, Armenian schools. Some of them are not Armenian schools. We visit summer camps and after-school programs and youth groups and so on and so forth. And we teach them about the environment in Armenia. And many schools have trips to Armenia, or they used to before the pandemic. And so we call this program Building Bridges. And what we'll do is, before the trip to Armenia, before the American schools class trip to Armenia, we'll introduce them to some students in a school in Armenia that we work with who are about the same age. They'll interact with each other. And then when the trip happens, the students will spend a day with us. They'll meet the local students who are their age, and they'll have a tour of one of our nurseries, one of our environmental education centers. They'll have a lesson, they'll do a hands-on activity, and then they'll plant trees together. So it's a really great program. Like I said, it's called Building Bridges, and we've been expanding it recently. Actually, during the pandemic, we had some of our educational materials translated into Western Armenian for the first time. And we've begun some outreach to Armenian schools in the Middle East. So we're hoping to continue to experience it. We were happy to receive a grant from the Gulbenkian Foundation to translate those materials into Western Armenian so we could expand our outreach into places like that where there are strong Armenian communities. So
wonderful. This is great work. I wonder, we also of course have a local Armenian school that might be interested in this. So I will put you in touch with the principal.
Yes,
so
I'll be happy to come.
will...
When I was in Armenia last week, I met a woman from France who told me about a new school, maybe it's 2 years old, in the city of Valence, which I had never heard of before. And so I'm hoping that we'll go there too. Anywhere we're invited, we'll be happy to go and tell kids.
That sounds great.
Yeah. One more small program that I wanted to tell you about that we have, which is very popular with our supporters, and maybe you'll see why when I explain it. It's called the Backyard Nursery Program. And what we do is we identify families in villages who want to work with us, and we give them seeds. And they plant the seeds in their own backyard, and we teach them how to care for those seeds. And when the seedlings are ready to be transferred to one of our planting sites, we purchase the seeds from those families. So right now we're in a couple of very remote villages, and these people, they work very hard at it. It's hard work, but they can make significant income. Significant is relative, of course. These are areas of the country where maybe the average annual income is $1,200. If you make another $800 working with tree projects, that's a big deal. And it enables them to stay in their village. They don't have to leave to look for work in Russia or somewhere else. They can stay in their home, in their village. And so it's been very popular with our supporters, and it's very popular with us because it's such a great program. These people, once they've learned how to do it, and we provide them with support, they get regular visits from one of our monitors. They are so excited to do this work. I've had people tell me when I visit them, I used to grow potatoes here, and then I tried to sell the potatoes, but I make so much more money doing this that I can now buy whatever I need. And I was there 2 weeks ago. I went to the village of Akhavnavan, which is the sort of northeast of Dilijan, and we have quite a few backyard nursery families there. And I visited one woman who I'd visited several years ago, and she wanted us to come inside the house so she could show us. She bought new furniture with the money she made last year. And I noticed that she actually had a new room. She used to have sort of a porch outside, and she'd enclosed it and made a new living room. And I said, "Oh, you have a new room too?" She said, "Yes, I paid for that with the money I got from Tree Project too." So she's so proud of it. And we're just so happy to be able to help these people. And it's a great program. We've been working with the European Union this past year. It's a grant program that will go on for another 2 years. And through that grant process, we're going to add another 150 backyard nursery families to the program. Many of them will be in the Shirak region, which, as I said, is a very dry and dusty place. And these villages, Shirak is one of the poorest regions of Armenia. These villages don't have lots of economic opportunity. It will be a challenge because it's a challenge to grow trees in a dry and dusty place, but we feel like we're up to the challenge, and we're really looking forward to continuing to expand the program. So
sounds like so much great work is happening on the ground, and
thank you.
Wonderful stories. So I'll introduce Ruben and have him tell us a little bit about what he's doing. So Ruben Khachatryan is the founding director of the Foundation for the Preservation of Wildlife and Cultural Assets, or the FPWC. Ruben has studied global environmental management and policy in Georgia, Germany, and Switzerland. So we'll have to speak in German then. He also studied fine arts and film directing. I hope we get a chance to hear a little bit about your documentary film work. And in 2002, he established the FPWC, and since then has directed an enormous amount of conservation and environmental education projects in Armenia. And I think one of your most important accomplishments is the in regards to conservation efforts is the establishment of the Caucasus Wildlife Refuge in 2010, which is now a privately protected area of enormous acreage. Ruben has also been the director of the Yerevan Zoo and has been recognized by the Republic of Armenia as Ministry for Natural Protection with a golden medal, as well as the Frankfurt Conservation Prize. So welcome, Ruben. And I asked JeanMarie to share a little bit about her work and what the Armenia Tree Project is doing. And so we are curious, what are you working on currently? And what does the FPWC do? Oh, no, he's frozen.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Sure. Good. Actually, today we are in the center of Caucasus Wildlife Refuge, where we started 10 years ago with 400 hectares. And these were crucial, important habitat for Persian leopards, bezoar goats, and many, many other species. And today we are celebrating. I'm a bit late because of the celebration. We have more than 100 guests and showing a very important movie in partnership with Golden Apricot Festival, a film called Gunda, about animals, animal welfare, about animal behavior and our attitude towards animals. These are about domestic animals, but in general, I think that humanity should change a bit the perception towards wildlife, of course. So yes, 10 years ago, we established the Caucasus Wildlife Refuge with 400 hectares, and now we have something like 30,000 hectares. But the most important part, how many projects besides the ongoing projects we are doing on the site with the communities together. So involving communities, this is the key point of our conservation efforts. We are trying to establish a network of eco-village network, a concept which is different from current one of administration in general, how people are seeing their future, how they are benefiting from nature, and how they can be more sustainable. Within the concept of eco-village, it's very, very important to have 4 different components about ecological, economical, social, and cultural. So these all 4 components is in a balance to secure the sustainability of the community, of the habitat they live. And this is what we are trying to do. We involve almost 40 more communities. And in these last 10 years, we invest in numbers, I would say something like 3 million euros only for infrastructural developments. Besides the conservation efforts, what we are doing, like hiring local rangers from the communities, providing all kind of technical capacities, what they need in order to monitor with trap cameras, with online cameras, with everything they need, car, horses. And this data, of course, is available also for our authorities in Nature Protection Ministry and worldwide. Now we are investing smart technologies, which will help our rangers and overall to monitor better against the poaching, because the poaching is still a problem in Armenia, and of course against the wildfires. Wildfires is another topic which is growing with the concept that climate change and is very crucially important to understand the threats what we're going to have within next 10 years and prepare ourselves. So this is the Caucasus Wildlife Refuge in general. Just a week ago, we show also here in our event today, a leopard called Nova visited us. And actually, I prepared a small video because while I'm talking, I can screen it, but maybe the sound will disturb. So I will tell and then show if you allow me to share the screen. And we assume that this leopard is a female. There is another male coming from Khosrov Reserve visiting Nova, and the name of the male one is Neo, which was observed almost 3 years from WWF organization. And so we hope very much that there will be a mate in Caucasus Wildlife Refuge, and very soon we will have great news about leopards and continuation of their habitat, which is a sign that it's secure and that Armenia and Caucasus Wildlife Refuge is a crucially important corridor connecting Khosrov Reserve and all other parts of the country, but also towards Iran. Now Vartahovit, which is another part of CWR, is becoming almost border area. And of course, for the rangers, we need more advanced technological capacities to be secure in their work, because every time going to the border is already a tension, is already a risk in a way that, so that's why we are trying to involving more innovative technologies to reduce the risk of the workers, our rangers in this particular case. But talking about FPWC in general, next year we will become 20 years. And we started actually production of documentaries telling about Armenian wildlife. And we were showing it in public TV to show our public what we have and why we need to protect, because there was a lack of information. There was not really awareness about conservation, about the environment, about wildlife, about the treasures what we have and that we need to protect. So that's why this series of documentaries went through, but then we decided that it's not enough. So we started an environmental education project. We established a network of eco clubs for free for the pupils in different regions. And through these eco clubs, more than 5,000 pupils went through. They create their own reportage, their own documentaries. We gave them tools like a play toys, film camera and photo camera, to zoom in into nature, to discover the treasures, to discover also the problems, be critical in some points because of the adults that they are throwing garbage into rivers or polluting the environment. And this message from youth to the adults worked very well. And in some villages, in some particular cases, we have very, very positive changes because of the works of the kids. Of course, these films and documentaries went through many, many international festivals. They won prizes. They raise also information and about Armenia, the problems, but also how beautiful Armenia is and how hospitable Armenia is, but also how rich Armenia within biodiversity, and the kids were very proud. So we grow a generation, we call them son children, and they choose, most of them, they choose to become filmmakers, journalists, environmentalists, landscape architects, and they are very successful. So we are very, very proud of it, but this work should be continued. And of course, besides this, we have another public awareness, let's say, event, a major one, which we do every year. It's a Sunchild Environmental Festival, the only environmental platform in the region to bring movies, to bring the best, let's say, cases, examples of campaigns of environmental issues, but also the hope for the changes to show our public and youth specifically. And there are many meetings, discussions, debates on this. And next festival will be in November. There are more than 100 documentaries and about environment, about conservation in general. Wow. So in a short, this is FPWC.
Thank you so very much. What great work. I have a question, and then I will go right to audience questions. We already have quite a lot there. I'm wondering, so JeanMarie, you've and both of you work very closely with community members, and I think one of the sort of pillars of both of your organizations is to really get community members involved, provide also employment opportunities, as we've heard in both of your cases. Do you ever encounter pushback from community members?
Well, speaking from my experience, no, although I would say that in the early days of our Armenia Tree Project, you know, this is before I joined, but I've heard the stories in the early days of the 90s when we went to communities and said to people, we're going to give you fruit trees. They were skeptical. What's the catch? Why would you just give me these fruit trees? But now we've been around long enough that everybody knows about it. You know, sometimes people have other ideas for the land that we want to use to plant our community forest, and that's okay. But there's a lot of unused land in Armenia which is available to plant community forest, and we've been using it. I was in Artsakh for a few days last week, and we have a couple of programs that we're going to be introducing there in the coming year. One is we're establishing a nursery in Stepanakert, and from there we'll be able to operate our community tree planting program. And the other is we've identified about 50 families in villages to whom we're going to give small greenhouses so that they can grow vegetables. We'll also give them fruit and nut trees. But the idea was prompted by the news that much farmland was lost in the war in 2020. And so there's a concern of future food shortages. So we're giving some of these people small greenhouses. We did encounter some skepticism in the beginning when we went to Artsakh and started talking to local officials about establishing this nursery. You know, we're going to come in, we're going to hire local people, we're going create this nursery. And again, they're wondering sort of what's the catch? What's the risk to us? There is no risk to them. We are doing it simply because we want to benefit the community. And now that everyone's gotten accustomed to the idea, they really welcome it and they love it. So we're very happy about that.
How about in your case, Ruben?
It's very interesting. When I see like back 10 years ago, it was a challenge for us to take land for lease, just for conservation. Yeah. But then what's happened after several years, we invite other heads to show what we have done and what is the project about. And I remember Vartahovit mayor came to me and asked, you know, how many years I was looking for an organization like yours, because we have a problem in our community, because many mining companies trying to take over the land, and we are trying to protect it. And if you can take it as a lease from us, so you can save the land, but we also want to involve in a long-term partnership with you. So this was a clearly good indicator that what we are doing is a necessity for many communities. Mm-hmm. And the further step, because our approach was leasing the lands. And the next step was that communities were offering us a land for perpetuity. Mm-hmm. With perpetuity contract, which was something very new in Armenia. It's a long-term partnership. It's if you want, we can say even a marriage in a way, because then we have also a dedication towards this community in a very, very long term. And every year we are trying to bring something new in terms of innovative technologies, street lighting with LED lights, for example, solar panels hitting their kindergartens and schools, and water pipelines or irrigation. And those are villages that like there were no even water system, drinking water system in those villages. As a Gnishik, for example, which is a very, very old village. And it was at the edge of, let's say, closing down. And now, because of the investments, people are coming again back. They are buying lands, they are building their houses. So the life is coming back to those villages. And of course, these are places with high biodiversity. In those villages, the heads, the administration, but also people, they want to collaborate more, and some of them, they are part of ICCA, for example, which is Communities for Conserved Areas. As you know, it's a status also in IUCN category as territories of life. For example, Vartahovit is recognized as territories of life. And in WDPA, World Database of Protected Areas, CWR is involved, but also Vartahovit is recognized as territories of life, which is very important step forward towards privately protected areas. Because this model, what we are forcing in Armenia, of course, still not recognized by our government and authorities, but it's also our task to explain that we are taking a huge burden from their shoulders, from the government, because government cannot spend millions and millions for protected areas. But organizations like us are able, and proving also 10-year anniversary, that expanding and finding new models, because we are less bureaucratic, we are more flexible. We can find much more partners easily from abroad, from everywhere, from the world, and technologies and methodologies which are used to create privately protected areas. prove that they are very sustainable, and it can be for benefit for Armenian people.
Thank you so much. It brings me to a question I think that is lingering in my mind from sort of Wednesday, where we had the former Deputy Minister of the Environment talk a lot about the challenges that Armenia is facing. What is your relationship to the government? How much is the government involved? How much do you collaborate with officials on the ground?
Should I start maybe, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I remember there were times like 20 years ago, it was really very hard for us to collaborate. Especially in that time, there were even problems that some officials using helicopters for poaching. And we were the ones who were showing the problems of our conservation, showing the poachers, and we were not so much welcoming from the governmental authorities back then, 20 years ago. And then there was a time a bit that we started to collaborate, and even I got golden medal, as you mentioned, from the Ministry of Environment. And we, time to time, we also participate like willow tree cuttings, planting and involving the communities. We started together with ATP by the request of Ministry of Environment. There are some small collaborations, but in larger scale, I think our government, and the current one especially, they should recognize and identify for themselves the role of civil society and NGOs like us, like ours, how they can even use for themselves for the benefit of conservation in Armenia. I think there is a still gap in this that they should make them clear how they can make us useful, more useful, because from the collaboration with Armenian ministries, and of course our work can be much more efficient, much more visible. Otherwise, there will be a kind of gap which is difficult to cover later on. This is in short.
Thank you. JeanMarie?
Sure. For the most part, over the past 26 or 27 years, our interaction with the government has been on the local level. We work with local communities, and most of our forestry plantings have been on community land. We enter into an agreement with the local community leaders. They lease us the land, similar to what Ruben said. They lease us the land and we plant forests on that land. Of course, we have to do some work with national ministries. We need to do environmental impact assessments before we can plant these forests. We have worked with the Ministry of the Environment and the Ministry of Territorial Integrity. But up until now, we haven't done any large-scale programs with the national government. As I said, it's mostly been on the local level. 2 years ago, Armenia Tree Project and the Activism Center at the American University of Armenia had a forest summit, and we invited people from all sectors to participate. We had great participation from Armenia's government ministries of environment, territorial integrity, and so forth, as well as international participants. And we had some really great discussion and produced a white paper about what Armenia needs to do in order to succeed in its plan to double the forest cover over the next 30 years. And a lot of what needs to be done in the initial phases has to be done by the government. For example, identifying the areas where forests can be planted, training the workforce. We don't have a lot of trained foresters or nursery workers. Public organizations, private organizations, and NGOs can certainly help, and Armenia Tree Project can certainly help. Nobody else is producing seedlings at the rate that we are, not even the National Armed Forces Organization. We have the expertise, we have high technology, and we're happy to share it, but we're not capable of planting 800 million trees over the next 30 years. So it's going to be a cooperative effort, and I foresee that we will deepen our relationships with the government.
Yeah, it's a big promise that was made at the Paris Agreement to reduce the greenhouse emissions.
Yeah.
That needs also now some follow-up, and it's good to hear that there maybe is some hope. This is a question from Michael Pfeiffer, and I think this question is actually for both of you. He says it's for JeanMarie, but I think, Ruben, I think you might also have something to say about this. Michael says, thanks for your important work. After planting so many new forests and after creating so much biodiversity, how do you track or measure the impact on the kinds of local wildlife? I think both of you have something to say about that. I think Nova is an example of measurement.
Oh, sure. We love to hear. I told Ruben this when I saw him in Yerevan last week. I follow those leopards very closely online. I'm so excited about them, and I'm really excited to hear that we think there's a female and there might be babies, because it's such a conservation success story. It's such a great story of conservation success. When you plant trees, you're not just cleaning the air, you're preserving the groundwater and reducing dust and so many other things. But one of the things you're doing is creating habitats for animals. And so we are creating habitats for animals. In terms of establishing biodiversity, we're hoping to preserve the biodiversity that Armenia has, right? I mean, to preserve its existing unique genetic heritage within the existing forest. And that's one of the reasons why we plant, native trees and so forth. Our forests are all pretty new, they're 20 years old or less. And so I think, Michael, that we're going to see the impacts in another 20 years or another 25 years. To date, what we've been measuring is the survival rate of the new forests that we plant, and their survival rates are pretty high. They're higher than international standards. In our forestry program, we usually have between a 75 and 80% survival rate, which is excellent. And in the community tree planting program, it's even higher. And so we know that our trees are surviving and they're going to grow into mature forests. If you saw many of our forests these days, although they're kind of hard to get to, they're in remote areas that, they don't really look like a forest. They look like a future forest. So we'll be doing those measurements, and we know that anytime you plant a tree anywhere in the world, it has an impact. And so we're really looking forward to having the kind of data you're looking for, but it might be another couple of decades.
Yeah, for us, it's more visible because we use truck cameras and live cameras, and we monitor through our rangers. They have special also gadgets that they are recording all kind of footprints, and they have very good photo cameras with huge zoom to identify even individuals of how many bird species, vultures, for example. I remember times 10 years ago when we were exactly in this area, in Urtazor, when and we were 1 week we were on the field. We hardly seeing bezoar goats running, maybe a couple of individuals only. 10 years after, we see in one mountain only, 3-4 groups, in each group 30-40. It's because it's silent, it's because it's quite enough for them to feel comfortable to stay. Of course, time to time, they're running from one place to another because leopard is around. And especially during the time when after the giving birth and bezoar goats are running with babies, we unfortunately see also that some of the babies are disappearing. And eagles, for example, stone eagles or leopards or even lynx are coming here because of the food. It's a circle, it's a chain, it's everything connected to each other, and the indicators are very clear. So it's much more work should be done, because 10 years in general for the Mother Nature is just 1 second, is nothing in a way, but of course in 10 years time planting 1 million trees is almost something. So, and we share with ATP some of the also challenging of reforestation. We took on us more for wildlife, because we are growing, our nurseries are growing wild fruit trees, which are also beneficial for the wildlife, for the birds, for the bears, especially because there is a huge human-wildlife conflict, or human-bear conflict, let's say, in most of the regions where bears are still roaming around. And it's because of the mainly bears coming down to the villages and destroying the beehives, destroying the gardens, and people are not anymore so much, let's say, kind towards sharing their income with the bears. So, of course, bears were there always in the past, but nowadays bears became maybe more smarter. But they are also smarter technologies to prevent and to secure the gardens and their beehives. So we introduce, for example, electric fences, how they can protect themselves and their beehives and their businesses, their gardens. We donated every year something for 50,000 US dollars, electric fences, just to introduce that the people understand to the benefit, and they start to use it to understand how it is beneficial. So it become like more in larger scale usage, and in somehow we can solve the problem to that direction. But indicators are clear, but it should be monitored, continue to monitor, and involving more advanced technologies, because technologies are the key also for conservation in the future. The first day I remember Irina Papelian, we were talking about decoupling, but the decoupling is still, Armenia especially is very far from decoupling. It's not only about energy, it's not only about aspects of technological or innovative approaches, but in general, people's mindset should be changed. This is, I think, the most challenging part of our, let's say, organization's duty, working with the local communities to change. This is much more realistic than to change the governmental, actually, mindset, which is changing too fast to follow up, unfortunately, last decades. But we have the great hope that it's becoming more and more sustainable, and technological involvement and input will raise the indicators in a way that the decoupling will be possible.
Thank you so much. Bears bring up another conversation, but I want to go to Lori Khachatryan's question, who says, thanks so much for the amazing work the ATP is doing. I'm wondering if the organization has explored possibility of tree planting in Armenia's post-industrial landscapes. Lori works on post-industrial landscapes and gave a beautiful lecture for us last year, I believe. Either as, no, I'm not getting there. Phytoremediation, yes, phytoremediation, using plants to reduce the toxicity of soil and contaminants in the environment, or to revitalize and beautify industrial wastelands at urban outskirts?
Mm-hmm. So when I think of the types of landscapes she's describing, I think of the areas around Vanatsor and JeanMarie, for example, where they used to be big factory towns, and now those factories have been closed for 30 years. And yes, we are planting in those places. One of the reasons we do it is to obviously beautify the community and create green spaces. Another reason that we do it is to create healthier communities. And in fact, I mentioned earlier this program we're working on with the European Union these days, and it has a heavy focus on the Chirac region and JeanMarie in particular. JeanMarie has had a lot of problems over the past 30 years, but one of them is that it's very dry and it's not a healthy place to live in. And we're doing lots of planting in those places. Sometimes we depend upon, the local community has to install or fix irrigation systems. If there isn't an irrigation system, they need to install it. If there is one, maybe it was installed during Soviet times and it needs to be replaced. But yes, when I say that we've done community revitalization, we've done that all over Armenia, and we plan to continue to do it.
Thank you so much. So it brings me to a question, I think that lingers. All of your projects sound amazing. One question that I have: what are the biggest challenges that you are encountering? And I'm assuming that the financial aspect of making this happen is part of that. But I'm curious to hear what are the biggest challenges that you are encountering and how you're working through those.
Well, it's an expensive project. For our Armenia Tree project, over the years, most of our funding has come from individual donors outside of Armenia. But we also receive grants from certain organizations. Like I said, right now we're working on a big grant with the European Union, and we continue to explore those opportunities. For us, what I foresee over the coming years is a challenge is the availability of land. Like I said, when we plant our new forests, we plant them on community land, and we have to have an agreement with the local community, and then it needs to be approved by the cadastre office. And sometimes the local community has other ideas for the land. But we are hopeful that since the entire nation has this goal to double its forest cover over the next 30 years, that we'll come up with a solution so that we can always have the land available. As I said, we're ready to plant 600,000 trees next year and probably 800,000 the year after that. We'll only be able to do that if we have an agreement that we can use available land in order to plant it. So for me, when I think about what's our biggest challenge in the coming years, it's always a challenge to fundraise, right? I mean, that's just the nature of being a nonprofit. But the biggest challenge over the coming years I see is available land. There is lots of land which exists in Armenia that is not being used for anything where we could plant forest. It's a matter of it becoming available for us to plant the forest.
Thank you. How about for you, Ruben, I think.
Is he frozen?
No.
No, I think.
Oh, no, he's not.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, good. So for us, the big challenge is, of course, besides the fundraising, is to make Armenia to be involved in processes which the conservation in larger landscape are offering. You know that there were this IUCN Congress very recently, and from Armenia we were the only members presenting Armenia there. We had some couple of sessions, but of course the desire to involve Armenian government into IUCN is very big. I'm trying this since many years to persuade the Ministry of Environment that it's very important the presence of even in ministerial level at the beginning, not in governmental, but at least in ministerial level, that they become a member of IUCN, for example. These are major challenges for like Armenian landscape, but also as an organization, because all our approaches like privately protected area, for example, recognition of eco-village concept, recognition of territories of life, bringing up these new methodologies and models for the community management are very much connected on recognition of Armenian authorities. But this can happen if they are part of big, let's say, family of what is happening in conservation world. The types of conservation categories, for example, is another challenge for us that we are trying to bring it forward for the authorities to recognize. There are several international organizations parallel working on this issue, but this is a big challenge because without this, our projects cannot be sustainable in a way. Yeah, we can do much, we can do much more, but at the end, there is a point that a government should recognize the models, the methodologies, and categories, let's say, yeah, that it stays forever, let's say. Nothing is forever, but at least some near future, we can say that this land or this specific community can be sustainable within their conservation approaches. This is a challenge. Another challenge is always growing wildfires, which is, I think, a threat for both of our organizations, specifically with growing forests. And here comes the right management of the forests, which is still not in a place. And even after the Soviet, it is not, we're not in a place. We should be open on this, and we should be clear that there is a huge gap in it. In Artsakh as well, in Armenia, we need to work on that. And we need our experts from diaspora to be involved in this. We need lots of volunteers, but also fundings which can bring new technologies, new innovative technologies for fire prevention, like to identify more quickly, to have the right capacity, to have the right knowledge, because it will become more and more with the time. We see in the world, it's everywhere. The wildfires are growing, and we should be preparing at the right time, with the right manner, to tackle against. So these are the challenges now I want to mention.
I'd like to chime in on the issue of wildfires. Several years ago, when there were those massive wildfires in the Khosrow Reserve, we enlisted one of the characters who's in our materials for students, which was a Gomper dog named Chalo, and we turned him into a fire safety professional. And he's a cartoon character, but he teaches children about fire safety and prevention. Many of the wildfires we experience in Armenia are caused by human activity, and it's important for people to learn how you can prevent wildfires. And we found that this is a great use of Chalo. I mean, not only is he cute, but he's a great crossover for the students we work with in California, where they also experience a lot of wildfires. And there are many Armenian schools in California where we work. And so Chalo is a good, he's a good ambassador for Armenia and for teaching about fire safety and prevention. It's one small way we can help. I mean, as Ruben said, I mean, it's a big issue that probably needs to be addressed on the governmental level, but both organizations are doing what we can to address it.
Thank you so much. And we could go on and talk, I think, for a very, very long time. Both of your works are incredibly interesting, and obviously you're making such big difference on the ground, and it's very much appreciated that you actually took the time out of your busy days to come and speak to us. Thank you so much again. So I'll see you both soon.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.